Absolutely no one could have guessed that I would disappear that very night. Not because of a fight, not because of some earth-shattering blowout, but because of one sentence. One sentence that toppled 37 years of patience like a row of dominoes built with sweat, tears, and silent endurance. They thought I'd fake a smile again, take a step back again, clean up the mess again like I always did. But this time, I let everything burn behind me. My name is Lily, the eldest daughter, 37, unmarried, childless, and always assumed to be the silent support beam of the Barnes family. My whole life, I've shouldered the things no one else wanted to do, from babysitting to cleaning up the battlefield after every family holiday. But no one ever asked if I was tired. No one ever cared what I wanted. That evening was my parents' 40th wedding anniversary. Walter and Diane Barnes. The party was held in the backyard of my younger brother Andrew's house, out in the suburbs of Portland, Oregon. String lights hung between the maple trees, tables loaded with grilled meat, cold beer, and a 3-tier cake I had ordered myself the week before. Everyone was there. Uncles, aunts, distant cousins, even old friends of my parents I didn't recognize. I, as usual, had been in the kitchen since the afternoon. I grilled meat, made lemonade, soothed Andrew's kids and my youngest sister Natalie's kids when they cried from falling or fighting over toys. I was the only one who didn't sit down for more than 10 minutes the entire party. But I was used to that. Around 8 p.m., my dad, in his crisply ironed white shirt, stood up, raised his glass to my mom, and tapped the rim like he was about to address the United Nations. The whole backyard went quiet. All eyes turned to them. "Thank you all for coming tonight," he said with a smug smile. "We have a special announcement. To celebrate 40 years together, next week the whole family is flying to Cancun, Mexico, for a beach party. Everyone here is invited." Oh, applause erupted, mixed with cheers from the kids bouncing on their chairs. Natalie screamed in excitement. Andrew turned to his wife, hugging her like they had just won the lottery. I stood frozen, still holding the bottle of hot sauce I was halfway through pouring into the salad bowl. Mexico? A family trip? The whole family? I looked around, no one looked at me. I swallowed hard, stepped toward the main table, and forced a smile. "Dad, what time's the flight, so I can request time off work?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. He turned to me, face darkening. "You don't need to know," he said loudly and clearly, in front of over 30 people. "Because you're no longer part of this family. You can stay behind and watch the kids, like, always." I went numb. My mom gave a little chuckle and waved her hand like she was shooing a fly. "Lily, don't be dramatic. You know everyone has their role. Taking care of the kids is what you do best." No one protested, no one defended me. Andrew looked down at his wine, Natalie pretended to be on her phone. Everything blurred around me. I don't even remember when I put the hot sauce bottle down. My throat tightened like something was strangling me from the inside. I only remember stepping back a few steps, then turning around and walking straight into the house. Ignoring the faint voice behind me. "Lily, are you okay?" Natalie's voice, weak and far too late. I didn't answer. The door slammed shut behind me with a sharp crack. I didn't look back. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I walked to the front yard where my car was parked, under dim streetlights and the crisp air of an autumn night. My hands trembled as I slid the key into the lock, but inside me, something had never been more certain. I was leaving this place. Without a word, without a trace, and this time, I wasn't coming back. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't turn on the lights, didn't play music, didn't speak. Only the sound of tires from afar drifted in from the street in front of the apartment complex where I rented an old unit. A place I had once called a temporary stop, between rescuing the family again and again. But this time, I knew. There would be no next time. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone face down, the screen as dark as my mood. No messages. No calls. No apologies. They were probably still partying, still laughing, still talking about swimsuits for a trip I was never invited to. At 1:43 a.m., I stood up and pulled a suitcase from under the bed. An old canvas duffel. I tossed in a few outfits, a pair of sneakers, my wallet, passport, and personal documents. Then I stopped at my tiny bookshelf. I hesitated over a red notebook. Inside were sketches and design ideas I once dreamed up back when I was in college, studying interior design, before I dropped out to take care of my mom during one of her dramatic colds, which was really just a bad flu and a flair for theatrics. I took the notebook. Not because I had hope, but because I needed to remember I once had a dream. I locked the door, wheeled my suitcase down the silent hallway through the parking lot, and sank into my old but loyal 2006 Toyota Corolla. I didn't need GPS. I knew exactly where I was going. Astoria. A coastal town 3 hours from Portland, nestled between cliffs and the misty gray sea. I'd passed through once during senior year. On a field trip I had to cut short because Mom called and said, "Andrew has a fever, come home and take care of him." That time? I only stood on the bridge over the Columbia River for less than 5 minutes, but the image of that small, wild, cold city, where no one knew who I was, still lingers in my mind to this day. I arrived in Astoria while it was still dark. A thick fog covered everything, making the streetlights look even more eerie. The sound of the ocean was constant. No one called. No one asked where I was. I turned off my phone. I drove around for a while before stopping in front of a bar called the Rusty Anchor. The sign was peeling, and above it hung a small board that read, "Room for rent, cash only." I knocked on the door at 6:10 a.m. A short man with barbed wire-like facial hair, wearing a shirt with a few buttons undone, opened the door. He looked me up and down and then said, without asking my name, "Cash only?" I nodded. The room he showed me was on the top floor, accessed by a narrow staircase with a cracked wooden railing. The room was just big enough for a single bed, a sink, and a small window that looked out over an alley filled with trash cans and empty beer boxes. I set my suitcase on the floor, locked the door, and then sat down heavily on the bed. The mattress sank deep. The smell of dampness surrounded me, but I didn't care. No laughter, no children crying, no "Lily, did you go to the market yet?" or "Lily, take Natalie to school." No one needed me. And strangely, for the first time in years, I felt light. I closed my eyes. I didn't sleep. I just let myself drift between the feelings of emptiness and freedom, two things that had never coexisted within me before. That afternoon I walked downtown. I rolled up my sleeves to cover the faded ink stains on my arms, a reminder from my younger days when I wanted to tattoo my own name so no one could erase it. But then my mom found out, and forced me to get it removed. I walked along the harbor road, listening to the distant sound of ship horns, the wind blowing hard, messing up my hair. I asked a few people about work. No one asked too many questions, no one judged where I was from. At a coffee shop called Dockside Joe's, a woman with curly hair and a t-shirt with an octopus print pointed toward the counter and said, "If you know how to wash glasses, wipe tables, and handle rock music, I'll hire you." No resume. No reasons. I smiled and nodded. Within 12 hours of being cast out from the family, I had left everything behind. I didn't leave a note. Didn't look back. And I knew they wouldn't look for me. At least, not because they missed me. They only remembered me when they needed someone to clean up after every party. I started working at Dockside Joe's the next morning when it was still foggy and the smell of salt from the sea still lingered in every gust of wind. The coffee shop was perched on the dock where fishing boats had been arriving since early morning, and fishermen quietly dragged their wet boots across the old wooden floor to get their first cup of coffee. I had no serving experience and I wasn't used to the chaotic calls and the sound of the coffee grinder mixed with the banging from the kitchen. On my first morning I spilled 2 lattes, gave the wrong bill to a tattooed man, who glared at me like I had insulted his entire family. I almost cried when I broke the only tall glass in the shop. Calm down, Lily. Everyone here has broken their first glass, Sheila, the short-haired cashier with a hoarse voice like old rock music, said when I was nervously holding the broom. They only remember you if you break the 10th one. I laughed, the first time since leaving home. Sheila was around 40, unclear whether she was divorced or just didn't believe in marriage. She smoked like it was second nature, swore more than anyone I'd ever met, but she was the only one who talked to me without pity. She didn't ask where I was from, didn't wonder why I quietly wiped tables until I was exhausted. She just pushed a croissant toward me when I forgot to eat breakfast, and said, "If you pass out here, I'm not carrying you. My back's not like it was when I was 20. 3 weeks later, I had gotten into the rhythm. No more shaking hands when stacking glasses, no more fear of the kitchen boss Harold's scowls. I woke up at 5 in the morning, worked until noon, took an hour's break, and then worked the afternoon shift. At night, I wandered the small town. Astoria was still cold, still damp but not suffocating. No one called my name when I lay down. No one asked me to sacrifice one more time for the family. One late afternoon, when walking past a small pawn shop tucked in an alley behind the train station, I saw it. An old Canon camera, scratched lens, faded strap. I stood frozen in front of the display case. Next to it were broken guitars, a few dead watches, and a cassette player that seemed to be from my grandfather's time. The shopkeeper, an old man with thick glasses and chewing a peppermint, looked at me and said, "You into photography?" I shook my head, but my eyes were still fixed on the camera. "Give it a try. It used to be the joy of many people." I didn't say anything, just pulled out a few bills from my wallet. That camera became the most expensive thing I'd bought since leaving Portland. That night, I sat on the roof behind the bar where I rented the room, holding the old camera, my heart racing as I took my first shot. The streetlight shining through bare tree branches. The photo was blurry, but somehow, I kept it. The next day, I brought the camera to the shop. When Sheila saw it, she scoffed. "Another dreamer?" I shrugged. Better than burying myself in resentment. She looked at me longer than usual, then nodded. "You should photograph the dock at dawn. The cranes look like steel monsters, ugly but impressive." That night, I did as she suggested. I went to the dock at 4 in the morning, hands frozen, legs shaking from the wind, but I managed to take a few shots. Not beautiful, not edited, but real. Real, like me. No longer Lily from family parties, no longer the silent shadow wiping tables. One evening after my shift, Sheila shoved a small piece of paper into my hand. "My friend teaches an adult photography class at the community center. You should try. No one judges anyone there." I looked at the paper, a strange feeling stirred in me. Hope. I lifted my head and asked, "Why are you helping me?" Sheila shrugged. "Because I see something different in you, and I hate seeing people stuck when they could step out." I went back to my room and looked at the photos scattered across the bed. The silhouette behind the crane, the waves crashing against the rocks, the light shimmering through the raindrops still clinging to the dock's railing. I wasn't good yet. But I was living a life I never dared imagine. No one was controlling me. No one was defining me. And for the first time in 37 years, I started to believe I could be myself, without anyone's permission. I was wiping the last table of the evening shift, my hands sticky with cold coffee, and all I wanted was to dip my feet in warm water, when my phone in my pocket buzzed. 3 times. Then it stopped. Then it buzzed again. The name on the screen was Sophie. I froze. Sophie was my oldest niece, Natalie's daughter. Only 14, but always the one in the family who would ask, "Aunt Lily, are you okay?" after every party when I was exhausted. She would doodle on napkins and slip little notes into my pocket with things like, "I love you the most." I hesitated. Part of me wanted to let it go to voicemail. But my fingers swiped across the screen. "Aunt Lily?" Her voice trembled, as if she was hiding in the laundry room and speaking softly. "Oh yeah, I'm here. Mom and Grandma are really upset. Everyone doesn't know where you are. Mom said you were mad and left, but But I miss you. Can you come home? I sat down on the chair by the sink, resting my hand on my forehead. That familiar feeling came back. The feeling of wanting to go back and comfort someone. To fix the holes in a family that was never complete. I swallowed hard. Sophie. I can't. I have to go because if I don't, I'll lose myself too. There was silence on the other end for a long time, then she whispered. I won't tell anyone, but I hope you'll be happy. I bit my lip, thanked her, and hung up. My hands were shaking. Not because I was scared, but because I missed them. But that longing wasn't strong enough to pull me back into the old cycle. The next evening, when I was lying in bed, the ceiling fan creaking above me and the sound of rock music from the bar downstairs, seeping into my heart like waves, my phone rang again. This time it said, "Mom calling." I looked at the screen, then I hit the answer button. "Lily!" My mom's voice was sharp like a razor. "Where are you? The whole family is worried sick." I gave a hollow laugh. "Worried? 3 days and no one sent me a word. Now you remember I'm missing? Because there's no one to watch the kids?" "Don't be rude," she almost shouted. "You left without saying anything, and now you're complaining? We're about to go to Mexico and no one can watch the kids. Andrew and Natalie are fighting because they don't know what to do. You're the oldest, you should have responsibility." I jumped up from the bed, my heart pounding. Responsibility? I emphasized every word. I gave up school, I gave up work, to be the oldest sister. I changed their kids' diapers when they were out on dates. I washed dishes after Natalie's wedding party until 2 a.m. I paid Andrew's credit card bills without asking for repayment. And now, for one trip, you dare tell me I'm not part of this family? There was a pause on the other end. Then my dad's voice cut in, deep and angry. "What the hell are you doing, leaving like that and getting away with it? The kids need you, the family needs you." "No," I said firmly. "You don't need me. You only need my service. I'm not a servant. I'm no longer that 18-year-old girl who gritted her teeth and endured. I've left. And I won't come back." "You're so selfish, Lily," my mom hissed. "You'll regret this." "No. I'll live, for the first time in my life, without patching up the cracks of the whole family." I hung up before I heard any more. The phone dropped onto the pillow, the screen stayed lit for a moment, then went dark. My hands were cold, my heart pounding so hard I could hear every beat. But I wasn't scared. I felt light. Light, like finally taking off a worn-out suit of armor that had weighed on my shoulders my whole life. The next morning I walked into the shop, my eyes still red, but my back straight, my chin lifted high. Sheila looked at me, squinting. "You look like you just fought a bear." "More like a mother bear," I exhaled. "But I won." She nodded, pushing a cup of black coffee toward me. "Then work the evening shift today, celebrate the victory." I smiled. And agreed. That evening, Sheila shoved a folded piece of paper into my hand, the writing in black marker, crooked but clear. "Basic photography class, Thursdays at 7 p.m. at the Astoria Community Center." I looked up, surprised. "Do you think I should go?" She shrugged, taking a drag of her cigarette outside the shop. "I think you're holding the camera like it's a weapon. Instead of just shooting in silence, why not try learning how to shoot properly? Besides, you need a place to do something for yourself." Those words pierced straight through me, like a needle through the layers of dust-covered defenses in my mind. Thursday night, I stood in front of the community center with my heart pounding. The building was painted light blue, old but warm, the yellow light spilling through the glass doors like an invitation. I walked in, clutching the old camera to my chest like it was my last lifeline. Paul, the instructor, was a thin man with sharp eyes and a voice like water flowing over rocks. Not loud, not flashy, but every word he said made the class fall silent. He didn't ask why we were there. He just, "Have you ever seen something that made you want to stop and keep it forever?" I didn't answer. But I knew I already had my answer. It was that moment I stepped onto the dock at my first sunrise, when the sea wind whipped against my face, and I still took the shot, even though my hands were shaking from the cold and my eyes stung. The class didn't teach holo theory. Paul took us out. To the streets. To the docks. To where the cranes roared like giant beasts. He said, "Don't look for beauty like in magazines. Look for the truth. The rough, the dirty, the things no one bothers to see clearly." I photographed grimy hatted dock workers, their hands blistered, but their eyes peaceful as they looked out to sea. I photographed a woman collecting bottles among the rocks, her back bent like a bow, and a smile no one noticed. I started printing out my photos, taping them to the walls of my room. That shabby room above the bar now looked like a tiny studio, full of raw, unfiltered images. Each photo was a piece of me, a lily slowly coming back to life, no longer the peacekeeper of the Barnes family, no longer the silent shadow at parties, but my true self, with my own perspective. One night, after class, Paul and I stood looking out at the ocean, the wind blowing hard, the lighthouse beam sweeping long arcs into the sky. He looked at the camera in my hands, then asked, "Why do you shoot?" I froze. Such a simple question. But it took me nearly a minute to speak. Because I need to prove to myself that I can hold on to something that's mine. Paul didn't reply, he just gave a small nod, but I knew he understood. From that night on, I threw myself into photography like a drowning person grabbing a rope. After shifts at the cafe, I picked up my camera and went. I didn't plan, I just let my eyes lead me, searching for small moments, stories no one bothered to tell. An old couple walking slowly, hand in hand, through the park. A dog waiting outside a grocery store, watching inside as if guarding the whole world. A torn fishing net hanging over a railing, catching the blood-red light of the sunset. I began organizing the photos by theme. Dock workers. Life behind tourism. The things no one captures. My portfolio started taking shape. Not Instagram pretty, but gritty, alive and layered. Paul looked through it once and said, "These shots, they have a voice." "You're starting to find your voice, Lily." Back in my room, I looked at the wall covered in photos, and whispered to myself, "This is my life, no one can take it from me now." That night, I got a text from Sophie. Just one line. "They're in Mexico now, Mom's panicking because there's no one to watch the kids." I read it. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel smug. I just felt far away. In every sense of the word. And I didn't want to go back. I was wiping down the cafe counter at the end of the afternoon shift when the door swung open, the wind chime clinking softly. I looked up out of habit. And there he was, standing in the doorway. My father, Walter Barnes. In his old khaki jacket, looking thinner, his eyes no longer as sharp as the last time I saw him. My whole body froze, like I'd just been doused in ice water. Sheila glanced over from the register, said nothing, but I saw her eyes harden. Dad walked up to the counter without a word. I wiped another invisible mark from the surface, as if trying to erase his presence. "Lily." His voice was low, hoarse, and absent of the usual authority. "We need to talk." I nodded, pointing toward a corner table, the small one near the window, where no one paid much attention. I poured 2 cups of black coffee, no sugar, no cream, just the way he'd always had it. When I set the cup down on the table, I didn't sit right away. I looked at him, my voice cold as steel. "Talk." He cleared his throat, avoiding my eyes. "Mexico didn't go as planned. Everything was a mess. No one would watch the kids. Andrew and Natalie were fighting, your mother was freaking out." He paused. "The trip was cancelled." I stayed silent. "The whole family is trying," he repeated, as if trying to convince himself. "But no one can do it like you. We need you to come back." I held back a bitter laugh. "Ah, I see. You need me because it's convenient, not because you miss me, not because you care, just because there's no one to babysit or clean up." My dad looked at me, awkward. That day, At the party, your mother said too much. I didn't mean. You're no longer part of this family. I repeated it word for word, each one sharp. You said that. In front of dozens of people. In front of my nieces and nephews I love. He pressed his lips together, his hand gripping the coffee cup. I sat down, leaned back in the chair, let out a long breath, then spoke softly but clearly. I'm not coming back. I'm not little Lily anymore, the one this family can summon at any time, ask anything of, without a thank you. But, he started to object. Don't you see? I cut him off. I had to leave just to breathe. Just to find out who I am outside of being the one who fixes everything. He looked at me, for the first time, really looked. No anger, no yelling, just nothing left to say. I opened my canvas bag and pulled out a stack of photos, ones I'd printed 2 days ago to submit for Paul's class. I quietly placed them on the table. Look. He picked one up. The dock at sunrise, golden light hitting the bare backs of workers unloading cargo. Another one. A crane rising into the gray sky. The angle so sharp it looked like it could crush the world. I didn't say anything more. The photos spoke for me. You took these? He asked, so softly I almost didn't hear. Yes, every single one. No one told me what to shoot, no one edited behind my back, I did it my way, and people see value in that. He nodded, slowly, heavily. I stood up. Coffee's done, you can go now. He took a sip, set the cup down. He didn't look at me, but his voice trembled. Your mother still doesn't understand, but maybe I'm starting to. I looked at him. Not with anger. Not with forgiveness. Just calmly. Since I don't need you to understand everything. I just need you to stop pulling me back to a place I no longer belong. He nodded. No arguing, no begging, just quietly pulled out his wallet, laid a bill on the table and stood up, gently placing the stack of photos back into my hands. Keep going. If this is who you are, then I wish you luck. I didn't reply, I just watched his figure walk out of the cafe, shoulders smaller, back no longer bearing the weight of head of the family. Just a father, realizing for the first time that he no longer had control over his daughter. Sheila walked over, laid a towel on the counter, and asked quietly. That was him? Yeah. Looks like you didn't let him crush you this time. I smiled. This time, a real one. There won't be another time. I walked toward the back door, where the afternoon light hit the rusted sign that read, Dockside Joe's. In my hand was my old camera, still warm from the unfinished shoot earlier. I raised it, aimed at the sky now turning red-orange. I clicked snap. I had just kept another moment that was mine. A week after that meeting with my dad, I still wasn't completely calm. But the camera didn't let me stay still. I dove into photography like an addiction. Early mornings, I trudged to the docks while the fog still clung to the fish crates. Late afternoons, I waited to catch the moment sunlight passed through the broken windows of abandoned warehouses. I photographed things I never used to have time for, or more truthfully, was never allowed to care about. Sheila was the first to notice. You shoot like if you don't hit the shutter in time the whole world's gonna disappear, she said, pouring coffee while glancing at a freshly printed photo of mine. An old man with silver hair sitting alone beside a graffiti-covered wall. Because I'm scared it really will, I replied, more honestly than I expected. A few days later, Sheila tossed a wrinkled flyer into the pocket of my apron. Local photo exhibition, theme, the city and its fragments. Paul sent it over. Submit something, she shrugged. Doesn't matter if you win, just show up. I'm not good enough. Good or not, the photos taped all over your room aren't gonna answer that. But if someone looks at one and feels something, then that's a photo that matters. That night, I brought my portfolio to class, palms slick with sweat. Paul looked through every shot, longer than usual. After flipping past the last one, an old photo I took at the 40th anniversary party, with my dad in the center and me cropped out halfway, he looked up. That's the story. Don't leave it out. I blinked. It doesn't fit with the others. That's exactly why it belongs. You lived in that background your whole life. Now you're stepping out, let people see why. I named the series Roots and Wings. Roots, the place I grew up, the place I once believed was home. Wings, everything I'd built since I left that rotting nest behind. The exhibition was held in an old warehouse repurposed into an art space. Creaky wooden floors, warm yellow lights hanging from rough beams, the scent of paint and coffee mixing in the air. I walked in, heart pounding like thunder. Paul shook my hand and pointed to a corner wall where my prints were hung in simple wooden frames, evenly spaced. Sheila showed up right after me, dragging two friends with purple hair and ripped denim. Look at that, your name right next to the word artist. Fancy, huh? I blushed. I just take pictures, I'm not an artist. Then call yourself a storyteller with light? She patted my shoulder. People started to arrive. No one knew who I was. No one knew I used to scoop cat poop for my sister or wash dishes late into the night during family holidays. Here I wasn't the caretaker, the fixer. I was Lily. The one behind the lens. An older woman with silver hair stood for a long time in front of Crane at dawn. She asked, "You took this one?" "Yes. I used to work at the port. Looking at this, I can hear the screech of metal again. Thank you." For the first time in my life I felt something clear. My worth wasn't tied to anyone else. An hour later, someone asked to buy Man Beneath Graffiti. A young guy with leather bracelets, clutching a plastic cup of wine. "I need this for my studio, it matches my mood." I sold it for $60. Not a lot, but enough to make my hands shake as I signed the receipt. "You're an artist now," Sheila shouted, clinking lemonade cups with me. I glanced back at the old family photo, hanging at the end of the row. No one asked to buy it. But I didn't take it down. I left it there as a reminder, I was once part of something. But I've built something else. All on my own. Before leaving the exhibition, I sent a message to Sophie. Tonight I had photos up in a gallery. Someone even bought one. She replied a few minutes later. "I'm proud of you. They don't know what they lost." I put the phone back in my pocket, my shoulders suddenly light, like I had just taken off a backpack full of stones. On the way home, I didn't need a map, I knew every corner. Astoria was no longer a place I ran to. It was where I belonged. I was sitting in my small third-floor room, sunset spilling across the walls, photos hanging in a mix of old and new. My old camera rested on my lap, heavy but familiar. The phone screen lit up. A message from Sophie. "The family flew to Hawaii this morning. Everyone's there, except you." Mom said dinner felt like something was missing. I already know what it is. I read that message 3 times. And what I felt was strange. Not pain. Not anger. Not even bitterness. Just lightness. Like I had finally shed the invisible cloak I'd worn since I was 18. There was a time when a message like that would have kept me awake all night, spinning thoughts. Should I go back? Do they finally see I mattered? But now, I only felt peace. I typed back. "Enjoy your vacation. I'm okay." I'm proud that I walked away. Without waiting for a reply, I set the phone down, picked up my camera, and left the room. Astoria was still alive, a small town with a strong pulse, rumbling in its own way. I walked through rain-slick streets, warm shop lights glowing against the pavement. The bar below my room had music on again, the bass pulsed gently against my back, familiar, almost comforting. I no longer flinched at sound, I no longer ran from the noise. I'd learned how to let myself breathe in the chaos, and to find myself within it. The dock was lighting up. I walked to the edge of the water, where fishing boats sat still like they were sleeping, ropes creaking in the cold sea wind. I raised my camera. Click. A man was hauling crates of fish from the boat. Sweat clung to his brow, even in barely 50-degree weather. I took 3 more shots. I didn't need praise anymore. I didn't need validation. I knew one thing for certain: this was my choice, a life I made, not one given to me. I turned down a narrow alley, stopping at a brick wall covered in wild drawings. A young boy stood there, hand reaching out to touch a painted bird with outstretched wings. I click. Click. Something in that moment made me pause. The bird. Wings wide. Felt like me. Still wounded, still afraid, but flying. And flying because it wanted to, not because it had been pushed from the nest. I returned to the cafe. Sheila was clearing tables. "Hit the docks?" she asked, without looking up. "Yeah, still beautiful." I sat down, flipping through the photos I'd just taken. I just shot a painted bird on a wall. A kid was looking at it like it might actually fly. She squinted. "Sounds like you're not shooting to escape anymore." I smiled and nodded. "No. Now I shoot because I want to keep what's alive." That night I sat in my room, photos spread out across the bed. My thoughts drifted to the Roots and Wings collection from the exhibit. Strangely, after selling that one photo, I didn't feel defined by that success. On the contrary, I felt free. Unchained from needing anyone else's view to shape mine. I had once been Roots, buried deep in duty, in expectation. Now I was Wings. Not perfect, not straight, but entirely my own. I took one more photo, the yellow lamp casting light over the old camera. In the frame was my hand. Steady, no longer trembling. Early the next morning, before the city woke, I threw on my coat, slipped the camera into my bag, and stepped outside. No one stood at the door. No one asked, "Where are you going?" I walked into the soft fog, the camera swaying on my shoulder, my footsteps even in a town still half asleep. In the distance, the harbor, low rooftops, and the first streak of morning light cutting through the clouds. I was no longer the one left out. I was no longer the one who sacrificed in silence. I was Lily. The one walking through her life, asking no permission, needing no approval. And I was still walking. Lily's story isn't just a journey of walking away from a toxic family. It's a powerful reminder that you have the right to live for yourself. In real life, many people quietly sacrifice for their loved ones, forgetting their own worth. But like Lily, it's only when we dare to step out of the shadows that we truly find freedom, passion, and self-respect. Don't let anyone define you by the role they want you to play. You deserve a life that is entirely your own, whole, and free. What do you think about Lily's journey? Have you ever gone through something similar? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to follow the channel so you won't miss more heartfelt and honest stories about family and life.